Welcome everybody to an introduction to Marouflage. It's an old word meaning flaky paint. It's a 3,000-year-old method that comes from mural painting where canvases were glued or affixed to walls. We're using it for canvas painting on panels. And there's been many discussions through the past 300 or 400 years about how this could be an optimal way of painting of archival technique, because the canvas is stabilized by the wood supports, so it's not subject to the usual mechanical stresses. So we need a canvas, a panel, EVA glue, a brush, some clean card, and some weights and some scissors. And we're going to go through the process on a small panel. We want to choose the panel fairly carefully, so we want to avoid panels that have too much formaldehyde. And we can see here a nice maple board that's braced at the back. So that bracing means we can use a lighter panel without it warping. So we need to cut our canvas, so I'm placing the panel down on the canvas and I'm making sure that I have an overlap, because we don't want to just cover the top surface of the panel, but we want the canvas to wrap around. And we need to give a bit of extra for the back too, because we're gluing the canvas to the back of the panel as well. It's wrapping around from the front to the back, so we give some extra. We can use linen, we can use polycotton, or we can use standard cotton canvas. It's really up to you. Right, so EVA or high quality PVA, and you might want to add a little bit of water to your mix. If it comes out of the bottle really thick and you're trying to paint it on the board and it's kind of gunking up and it's proving tricky, then just a little bit of water mixed in can help it spread. We're just trying to give as even a spread as possible, and you want to watch out for lumps. You also want to avoid bits of lint or dirt falling in the glue, because we're pressing the canvas down onto the panel and any lumps that are trapped in between will actually show. So we want to make sure that it's free of debris. So we give a really even coat and make sure there's no kind of ridges or particular areas that are raised. And then we just make sure it's smoothed out. I'm using a soft varnish brush here, like the kind you'd use for a glaze. I find the easiest way to position the canvas correctly is to actually drop the panel face down onto the back of your canvas. Press down a little bit. Of course, you want to make sure your floor or the working surface or table is very clean so you don't get debris on the front of your canvas. And there we go. So now I'm just palming it down. I'm just pushing down. I'm just making sure that there's no air bubbles. I'm just making sure that there's maximum contact between the canvas, the glue, and the panel. So I'm just palming it down. And I'm kind of feeling, I can usually feel if there's any trapped air. It's important to note that if you misplace the canvas, you can quickly peel it off and reposition it. The EVA is actually fairly forgiving in this regard. And it tends not to cause the canvas to wrinkle or buckle too much either, so it's pretty good stuff. Okay, so there we go. So now if we're satisfied by that, we get a piece of card, a clean, smooth piece of card, and just put that down on our panel, and then just heap a pile of weights on top. I use heavy old art books, pretty perfect, and we make sure that we're getting those corners pressed down too. And then I just leave that for overnight, just to make sure that the glue has time to fully set. So here we are in the morning, and it's always exciting to see how it's looking. So I'm taking the books off and just examining how it's turned out. And we can see that there's a nice adhesion. But of course, we have to deal with the edges. So that's what we're going to look at next. So I've got it back on the table. And I start with 2 opposite sides. I don't do all 4 sides at the same time. So I'm getting my EVA out again and my soft varnish brush. Make sure you clean this brush very thoroughly every time you use the EVA, because it just takes half an hour of negligence and you've ruined your nice brush. So you can see this time I'm painting the EVA on the sides and the back bracing of this panel. If you're working with a panel that has no bracing, I guess you would be just covering the first 4 inches of edge around the sides of the panel. And I'm just making sure that the EVA is really getting into the grain of the wood, and we're going to get a good adhesion that way. This is a little bit sped up for the purpose of the video, because I know we all love art, but we might not love art that much to just watch me painting glue for 10 minutes. So here's my technique. I just grab the canvas, grasp it and pull it as hard as I can towards the center of the panel, and just really kind of tugging it, and even using the card there and sort of rotating the panel to push out the air, get a really clean edge, get maximum surface contact between the canvas, the glue and the panel. I'm tugging it. I'm doing a bit of palming as well, you know, just pushing out any air and trying to get that really tight, clean edge. So although we're covering the panel in a canvas, we're still getting a nice, crisp edge. So just spend a bit of time with that. There isn't actually any rush with it either, although I've sped up the video. Okay, so now I've done both those sides. It's back on with the card and weighing it down. And then several hours later, off with the books, and we're going to deal with the final 2 sides. And I'm going to show you how one way of dealing with edges. And there's different ways. If your canvas was thin enough, you could use a more conventional folding technique, but the canvas I'm using is really thick, so I have to do a little bit of cutting in certain areas in order to tailor the canvas to the panel and get a clean edge. So I need some scissors. And I'm just making some strategic cuts and losing some excess so I can glue the canvas nice and tight to the remaining 2 edges of the panel. What I'm showing here I use for each corner, each of the 4 corners. It's the same cutting style, so you just repeat that. Helps if your scissors are really nice and sharp. So you can see there I can get a nice tight flush edge with this cutting. There you see it's quite clean. And then we have to do that to the 3 remaining sides. And then it's time to get our EVA glue out again. And we do exactly the same technique as before, where we're just going to palm out the air bubbles and so on. So I'll show you how I put the EVA down. Making sure I get that glue right in the meeting place, the edge as well, because I want a really nice tight adherence on these edges. And just like with the other sides that we did previously, I'm tugging it towards the center of the panel. I'm squeezing it together with my fingers. I'm tugging it, I'm kind of ironing that crease in. I'm using the fat of my palm to squeeze and push the surfaces together. And you know, if the EVA is very wet initially, the canvas might want to kind of retract back to being flat or kind of fall off, but as it thickens up, as the EVA starts setting and it gets sticky, it should hold. It should be able to hold its position that you get it in. So just to repeat, the idea is we really want a nice crisp edge between the canvas and the panel. That's so it's going to make framing the panel, whether it's a floating frame or it's an overlapping frame later on, or if the panel is just without frame, that it's going to look nice and tidy. So now we've done that, it's back on with the books. And we just give it several hours to be safe. We take the books off. And hey presto, here is our Marouflaged panel. It's ready to go. There's all kinds of things we can do with this, including making a very crisp, sanded down gesso. It's almost eggshell smooth. We'll explore that another time. So the process is complete. Thank you for your attention, lovely people.